Every other main battle tank in the world burns diesel. The M1 Abrams burns jet fuel. The United States Army made that choice in 1972, and no other country has copied it since. This is why. By the late 1960s, the United States Army had a problem it could not solve with a diesel engine. The Soviet Union was fielding tanks that were getting faster, better armored, and harder to kill. The Army's existing tank, the M60, was reliable but slow and underpowered against what was coming. The Army needed a new tank that was heavier, better protected, and fast enough to keep up with mechanized infantry across the plains of West Germany. The problem was weight. More armor means more weight. More weight means you need more power. And more power from a diesel engine means a bigger, heavier diesel engine, which adds even more weight. Engineers kept running into the same wall. Someone suggested a gas turbine, the same type of engine that powers helicopters and jet aircraft. It produces far more power for its size and weight than any diesel. It starts instantly in cold weather. It runs on almost any fuel that burns, but nobody had ever put one in a tank before. And the reasons why were about to become very obvious. The engine chosen for the Abrams was the AGT 1500, built by Lycoming, the same company that makes engines for small aircraft. It produces 1500 horsepower. For comparison, most diesel tank engines of that era produced around 900. The Abrams weighs 68 tons, and it can hit 45 miles per hour on a road. That power-to-weight ratio was simply not achievable with a diesel of any practical size. A gas turbine works differently from a diesel. In a diesel engine, pistons compress fuel and air inside cylinders, and the explosions push the pistons, which turn a crankshaft. In a turbine, air is compressed continuously. Fuel burns in a continuous flame, and the expanding gases spin a series of blades. Think of it like the difference between a pump that pushes water in pulses versus a propeller that moves water in a constant stream. The turbine is smoother, faster to respond, and produces its peak power almost instantly. The trade-off is heat and noise. A gas turbine exhausts air at extremely high temperature. The Abrams exhaust is hot enough to ignite dry grass and has caused fires during training exercises. The engine is also significantly louder than a diesel at idle, which matters for a vehicle that is supposed to move without being heard before it is seen. These were known problems from day one. The Army accepted them. One of the selling points of the turbine was its ability to burn almost any liquid fuel: jet fuel, diesel, gasoline, kerosene, even heating oil in an emergency. A diesel engine is tuned to burn diesel and struggles with other fuels. The turbine does not care. You pour in whatever burns and it runs. This was enormously attractive to military planners in 1972. In a long war, fuel supply lines get disrupted, depots get destroyed. You take what you can find. A tank that can run on the same fuel as the helicopters, the trucks, and the jets operating nearby simplifies logistics in ways that are genuinely difficult to put a price on. One fuel type across the entire force, instead of managing separate diesel and aviation fuel supply chains. The trade-off was consumption. The Abrams burns fuel at a rate that shocked people when real-world numbers started coming in. At highway speed, it burns roughly 10 gallons per mile. Sitting still with the engine running, it burns about 12 gallons per hour just to keep the electronics and systems powered. Compared to a diesel tank of similar size, the Abrams burns roughly twice as much fuel to do the same job. That number became the central argument against the turbine for every army that looked at copying it. A turbine engine spinning at full speed cannot be connected directly to tracks the way a diesel can. The power delivery is completely different. To solve this, the Abrams uses an Allison automatic transmission with 4 forward gears and 2 reverse. The transmission converts the turbine's continuous high-speed rotation into the variable torque a 68-ton vehicle needs to accelerate, steer, and stop. The result is a driving experience unlike any other tank. Abrams crews describe it as smooth and car-like compared to diesel tanks, which are notoriously rough to drive. The turbine's instant power response means the tank accelerates hard from a stop, which is useful when you are moving between firing positions and need to get out of a location fast after shooting. Cold weather starting was another argument in the turbine's favor. Diesel engines in extreme cold require preheating systems, block heaters, and special low-temperature fluids just to start reliably. The turbine ignites in seconds regardless of temperature, which matters enormously for a tank stationed in West Germany during a potential winter war against Soviet forces. You do not want a tank that takes 30 minutes to start when the enemy is already moving. The Abrams entered service in 1980. Its first major combat test came in 1991 during Operation Desert Storm in Iraq. In 100 hours of ground combat, Abrams tanks destroyed over 3,000 Iraqi armored vehicles. Not a single Abrams was destroyed by enemy fire. The turbine performed exactly as designed in the desert heat, but the fuel consumption problem became impossible to ignore during that same war. Moving Abrams tanks required a fuel truck for every 3 tanks just to keep them running continuously. Logistics commanders described the fuel demand as their single biggest challenge of the ground campaign. The tank won every fight it entered. Keeping it fueled was the real operation. The second major lesson came from the engine replacement program. The AGT 1500 is powerful but maintenance intensive. Replacing the engine in the field requires a trained crew and specialized equipment, but can be done in under an hour when conditions are right. The Army designed the power pack, engine and transmission together, to be removed and swapped as a single unit. That modularity saved the turbine choice from being completely impractical in combat. No other country adopted the turbine tank after the Abrams. Germany, Britain, France, Russia and Israel all evaluated turbine engines and chose diesel. The Soviet Union actually built a turbine-powered tank, the T-80, but Russia later produced a diesel variant because the fuel consumption was unsustainable. The Abrams remains the only turbine tank in large-scale service anywhere in the world. The Army has looked at replacing the AGT 1500 with a more fuel-efficient engine more than once. Every study has concluded that the cost and risk of redesigning the powertrain of a tank that already works outweighs the savings, so the turbine stays. The engine that everyone said was a terrible idea is still running, still burning jet fuel, in the most battle-tested tank on Earth. Engineers still study the Abrams turbine choice because it is a clean example of a trade-off that was worth making for one army and not worth making for any other. The United States had the logistics infrastructure and the fuel budget to absorb the consumption penalty. Most armies did not. Same engine, different answer depending on who is asking the question. The Abrams burns jet fuel because the Army decided that speed and power mattered more than fuel economy. Every other army looked at the same numbers and disagreed. That disagreement is still sitting in a garage in every NATO country with a diesel tank inside it. Subscribe if you want more Cold War engineering breakdowns every week.